Cuba, it's me. Welcome to episode 247 of the W.I.L.L.I.W show, which stands for Wrestling is Life, Life is Wrestling. Now, today I want to talk about relationships and if they've ever been affected by your love for wrestling. And you know why they call them relationships? Because ships sink. So, anyway, um, if you're a fan of wrestling, you obviously have love for it. If you're a wrestler, a manager, a promoter, a referee, you help with the ring crew, whatever it is, and you have a passion for wrestling, sometimes it's hard for other people to understand it if they don't love it too. Now, my question is to you: has any of your relationships ever been affected by your love of wrestling? Has it ever come in the way of between you and your partner, significant other? Have you ever had a relationship end because of wrestling? Um, is or are you lucky enough to find someone that either likes wrestling too or supports your wrestling? I'll tell my little history. I dated this girl in high school, and we were pretty close. And basically, she knew I always loved wrestling. And when we put on wrestling shows in the yard, she would even sometimes come and watch, although she wasn't really interested. But she still supported me. And but when I we ended up separating because I was moving all the way across the country to be a wrestler, and she supported me, and we broke up amicably. Amic, I don't know. You know what I mean. But because too, like you're not gonna be with. Not often does a high school romance work out anyway, and we both wanted to do our own thing. So that was the first major relationship I have in wrestling. I mean, technically came in the way of it, but I don't know. I don't know if we would have stayed together or not. I mean, no one will ever know for sure now, right? Um, Now, the next major relationship I had, I was with this girl for about 3 years, and she wasn't a fan of wrestling. I met her at the wrestling school because she was there with her friend who was interested in one of the wrestlers, but she wasn't there to watch wrestling or cared about wrestling. And she was supportive of my wrestling, but she just didn't get it. It wasn't her thing. And it kind of did drive a wedge in between us because basically what happened is she was like 3 years younger than me. So at this point, I was like 23 and she was like 20. And she wanted to go out with her friends and go to the clubs and have a good time and go dancing and, just be social. And, unfortunately, I wasn't a very good partner to her because all I cared about was wrestling. And then at that time, too, drinking and smoking was a heavy part of my life as well. So whenever she wanted to go out, I didn't want to, and I was kind of stubborn. And you know what? Good for her for getting what she deserved out of life. I really did love her. I would never get in a serious relationship with anyone if I didn't love them. I've dated in the past quite a bit, but I usually can tell within the first couple weeks or a month if it's gonna be serious. And I've only ever had 3 serious relationships, but so I think the first two, definitely wrestling, had something to do with why we weren't together, because that's all I cared about. That was my first passion. Yeah, I loved her, but I loved wrestling more, and that's all I wanted to watch. It's all I wanted to talk about, and it gets boring, especially if you don't compromise. And that was my biggest thing. I didn't compromise. But you know what? I don't have any regrets because wrestling is life. Life is wrestling, and if that's what I love most, then shouldn't I pursue it? Then my third major relationship, I thought it was perfect. I met her on MySpace, and she liked wrestling too, and she thought it was cool that I was a wrestler, and she would come to the wrestling shows, and she would come and watch me, and she was supportive. So I thought this is the one to marry, whatnot, right? And so I ended up having a cameraman with her, and unfortunately, it didn't work out. This one was not because of wrestling. This was just because of a lot of different stuff that I'm not going to get into because that is a little bit too personal for me. But I have much love for her. She's family. She gave me the greatest gift ever, a cameraman. But I was kind of disappointed too because of us separating. I kind of had to. I mean, it worked out good anyway. Like I said, I don't have any regrets that I had to put wrestling on the back burner for a bit and focus on the cameraman, which I'm grateful for. Everything worked out great the way it is, and we're still cordial and get along and do what's best for the cameraman. So that's the main thing. And so I took a break from wrestling, which, like I said, it worked out good because I had a lot of injuries piling up. Um, but the real reason it worked out the best is because I was able to sit back and look outside of the bubble. When you're in the bubble, sometimes you're so focused on wrestling and what you're doing, and I realized I was doing it all wrong. And I would start to watch my old matches, and I would just get sad. And I'm like, man, my career, like, I didn't do it right. I didn't become anything, and so it started giving me the itch. Like, if I ever do come back, I want to do it right this time, and I want to do it the way it's supposed to be done, and get the fans to follow me and be entertaining and not just go out there and have practice matches in front of people. So I'm grateful the way everything worked out. It was like it was meant to be. And because of that, I did come back and it worked out. The cameraman got to be of the age, and he was into wrestling at that time, and he wanted to go to a show, so I brought him to a show, and I can't go to a show without wanting to wrestle. So the next thing I know, I'm starting to wrestle once every couple months, and now I'm doing it frequently, which, I mean, not as frequent as others, but for me, once or twice a month is enough, and I'm loving it. And so now I just think that, see, it's also hard too. If you have someone, if you're involved in wrestling, you want them to respect and, get your love for wrestling. But sometimes you don't want them to love wrestling too. You don't really want to bring anybody into the wrestling business. I've seen a lot of things where people have done that and they've got screwed over because of it. So you got to keep it separate, your relationship in wrestling. But it's nice when you find someone that can at least compromise and, love the fact that you have passion for something so much. But I mean, there is a lot of couples in wrestling nowadays. Like, for the ones in the major leagues that are traveling, they're on the road all the time. It makes perfect sense because then they have someone that can see each other all the time, and they understand what it's like, what they're going through. But a lot of those relationships don't last either. But I just want to hear from you guys. What's your experiences with any relationships you've had, and did wrestling have anything to do with that being a good thing or a bad thing? Just basically, the topic is relationships plus wrestling equals what? Because on the Willow Show, I like to hear your comments, so tell me what you think. Like, or you get a leg drop. Comment, or you get a clothesline. Subscribe, or you get a suplex. I'm your host, Elian Habanero. I love wrestling. Cuba!